So beekeeping, huh? Not your typical career path, right? But that's what makes it so interesting for our deep dive today.
Yeah, definitely not something you hear about every day.
We were looking at these RoleCatcher guides, and let me tell you, the amount of info they have is incredible. Bee breeders, specifically. Have you ever thought about what a bee breeder actually does?
Honestly, I had this, like, very simplified idea in my head.
Me too. But they're not just, hanging out with bees all day. These guides define it as a meticulous care and multiplication of bee colonies. Sounds kind of intense when you put it like that.
Meticulous is definitely the word, but that makes sense, right? We're talking about shaping entire colonies, not just caring for a few bees here and there.
Right, and it goes beyond just keeping those colonies going. It's about their health, how productive they are, even using things like artificial insemination to make sure certain traits get passed down.
Whoa, didn't realize it got that complex.
Right, so imagine breeding bees that are more resistant to diseases or ones that are, a bit more mellow and less likely to sting. That's the kind of impact bee breeders can have.
That's wild. It's
Right.
like you'd be engineering the perfect bee.
Exactly. And that all comes down to understanding the nitty-gritty of their daily work. What's interesting is the RoleCatcher guide actually breaks down their responsibilities. And honestly, it's a lot more varied than I expected.
Really. I'd
Yeah.
imagine it's a lot of, hive checks and honey collection.
Oh, there's definitely that, but it's also about being a bit of a bee detective,
Yeah. A bee detective. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So they have to monitor the hives for any signs of diseases, check for those pesky mites, and even use data to track things like how much the hive weighs or even the pattern of eggs the queen is laying. They call them brood patterns, I guess.
Wow. So it's a lot of, like, data analysis and stuff, too. I didn't realize modern beekeeping was so, high tech.
It's amazing, and all of that data helps them become better breeders.
I bet. So with all of this complexity, you'd think you'd need some fancy degree to even get started, right?
Right, like, do you need a degree in bionomics?
Bionomics, I love it.
But seriously, that's what I thought too.
Right.
But according to these guides, practical experience seems to be key. Apprenticeships, learning by doing. That seems to be the real school of bionomics.
Makes sense. Experience over theory, especially with something so hands-on.
So you don't need to be a bee scientist to get into bee breeding. That's good to know. But what about the job market? Is there actually a demand for bee breeders?
Oh, absolutely. And it's only growing.
Really?
Think about it. The beekeeping world is changing, right? You've got things like colony collapse disorder, and then there's this huge demand for, like, pollination services for all sorts of crops.
Right, because without bees, we don't eat.
Exactly. They're crucial. And that means skilled bee breeders are more important than ever. They're not just, supplying honey anymore. They're kind of holding up a big chunk of our food security.
Wow, that puts things into perspective.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
But it's also exciting, to be on the forefront of something so vital.
Definitely. I remember RoleCatcher had this statistic. They said bee pollination affects something like a third of the food we eat globally. It's incredible.
It's mind-blowing. When you actually stop and think about the impact, it's huge.
Right.
And bee breeders, they're right in the thick of it, making sure those bee populations are healthy and, well, doing their job.
It's like they're these unsung heroes of the agricultural world.
Totally. And the best part is there are so many paths you can take with this career. You could start small, maybe even just as an apprentice, and then eventually manage a big breeding operation. Or, you could totally specialize in something specific.
Like what kind of bee-related specialties are we talking about?
Well, you could become an expert in a certain type of bee, like, say, the Russian honeybee. They're known for being super resistant to mites. Or you could get really into the technical stuff, like instrumental insemination.
Instrumental insemination, is that what it sounds like?
Yeah, it's like the next level of bee breeding. Super precise.
Wow. So there's like a whole technical side to beekeeping I never even considered.
It's a whole world, and the learning never stops, You might start with just the basics of taking care of a hive, and then suddenly you're, like, analyzing genetic data and stuff. Or you could end up teaching other people how to be beekeepers.
Right. Passing on the knowledge.
Exactly. It's pretty cool when you think about it.
It is. Okay, so we've talked about the responsibility, the different directions you can go, but what about the, everyday reality? RoleCatcher had this whole section on the pros and cons of being a bee breeder, and they didn't exactly sugarcoat the challenges.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely not all sunshine and honey.
Right. So what are we talking about here? What kind of challenges?
Well, for starters, it's physically demanding. You're out in the elements all the time, dealing with, bee stings,
Hmm.
And you constantly have to be one step ahead of any potential threats to your hives.
Right, because those hives are your livelihood, essentially.
Exactly. It's a big responsibility.
So, with all that in mind, why would anyone choose this career path?
Well, despite the challenges, the rewards are pretty incredible. Like what? Think about it. You're working with nature, you get to produce something tangible,
Mm.
and you know you're contributing to something much bigger than yourself.
Oh,
Those are powerful motivators.
that's true. I can see how that would be incredibly rewarding.
And for a lot of people, those challenges, they're actually part of what makes it so fulfilling, you know? To overcome those obstacles and build something successful, something that's good for the environment, that's a pretty amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's definitely not a career for everyone. But I have to admit, after learning all this, it does make you think, like, how do people actually get started with this?
Well, you don't need to, quit your job and start building beehives tomorrow. RoleCatcher actually highlights a really simple first step,
Oh, yeah. What's that?
joining a local beekeeping club or an association, something like that.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's all about connecting with those experienced beekeepers, getting some hands-on learning,
Yeah.
They've been there, done that, so they can teach you the ropes, and you've got this built-in support system.
Exactly, like a hive mind. Right.
See, you've got the bee puns down already. But seriously, it's a great way to dive in without, diving in head first, completely unprepared.
Love it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The ins and outs of bee breeding, the challenges, the rewards. It's definitely not what I expected when we started.
Right. We went from thinking about, bees buzzing around in a garden to understanding the science behind breeding programs that help feed the entire planet. It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. It really highlights how crucial bees are to, well, pretty much everything. And the fact that there are people out there dedicating their lives to, like, understanding and improving these creatures is, I don't know, it's inspiring.
It is. And the best part is, it's a field where you can really make a difference.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this and thinking, hey, maybe bee breeding is my calling, where should they go to learn more? Besides the roll catcher guides, I mean.
Honestly, start with that local beekeeping club.
Mm.
You'll be surprised how welcoming and helpful they can be. And who knows, maybe you'll discover a passion you never knew you had.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So next time you see a bee, remember there's a whole world of dedication and skill behind that little buzz.